Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the information on uh, Spirit 101. I feel it's rather important, and it is part of the information that is related to the spirit amongst the winds of war, but I feel it's very much more important to have an emphasis on understanding what exactly it is that we're looking at, what is spirit, and so on, and what is deeper consciousness. It's basically the foundation of all things that are spiritually based. Spirituality, from the original text, explains it as a foundation of the origin of all things, as I've said before. It swings the bat. I've said it before. I must say it again. Spirit, the knowledge on spirituality, spirit in itself, irrespective of what the information is related to, whether it is tied in or wrapped up in belief systems such as religion, New Age, occult, etc., is really dismantling all of that so that we can actually understand it for its full capacity as such. So, so I'm starting off with a quote which was written by Richard Grossinger. I may not spell his name correctly, but he writes here, and I call this the conundrum because this is what it has been projected into this reality so very many often times that it's actually become a belief system in itself. So the quote is this: reality is a plasma-like matrix of thought forms, energy fields, and dimensionalities, creating and transforming information, or the starry vacuum. Astrophysical universe is astrophysical at one frequency and astral at another, atomic at another, and so on. Countless other planes and tiers of planes, each of them subtler and more informationally complex, radiate through the field, shimmering, transmitting, converting, that sets the parameters of the universe we are in. The reason the universe doesn't read like a thought form is that so many entities, living and dead, are projecting it through the physical of its own manifestation. Its manifestation is part of the impossible to see behind such a screen of ruffle, its mirage. The conundrum is how consciousness, in the form of individual personal identities, each known subjectively only to itself, gets inserted into a collective thought form, such as that the awareness of reality becomes identical to the physical of that reality. Richard Grossinger. I will write this quote at the end for you to look at again. I reiterate that that I would suggest you listen to this a few times through. This is not adept information. This is intermediary, and that means it's a little bit more advanced in terms of the information as such. And for those who have been on this channel with me for so long, you have seen and have taken note that the information that I do discuss has got these levels or tiers of understanding, which is important for all of us. Now, I start off with a misconception with regards to a few parts in the above quote, and so that we have the foundational expression of what spirit is and what is perceived as. I will try and simplify the information, knowing that it is the common misinterpretation of understanding of what creation is in its entirety versus what materialism is. And this is where, let's call it, the devil snuck in. Materialism is the inversion of creation. I'm calling it in a simplified state. Materialism is the inversion of creation. Materialism in itself is related to the valid veneration or belief of what is matter in your physical reality. In other words, giving a belief and venerating it as if it is something that is in control of you. Another example, materialism is based on the foundation of awareness that if I go for certain inoculation, that is going to heal me up. Or if I, according to the Bible scriptures or the texts, if you sacrifice your firstborn son, which I think was mentioned in, I can't remember which text exactly, where if you sacrifice your firstborn son, it'll mean that you have then proven to me that I have your undying support. That was actually mentioned by a certain god back in the day. That is based on materialistic subjection. In other words, if I subject myself to having to create or commit a sacrificial act against myself, against my higher consciousness, in honor or in relation to or in subjective response or reaction to something which I then perceive in my thoughts as much higher than me. That being said, further along, if you read that text, and I'll probably put it in where I found it, I can't remember what it is called, what it is now. That material in itself has been written by not just only the ones who tried to lie and create false information, but also people who really thought they had a spiritual important drive or mission to actually put the truth in as well. So I would suggest you read everything, but retain awareness and critical thinking at all times, so that you will then be given the examples of what it is that you're looking to understand on your personal journey. Excuse me. So if I want to explain to you what spirit is in itself, I cannot just explain it for itself. I have to bring in the discussion, the information on creation, and then I must explain to you, like I've just described to you, what materialism is. And materialism has become a religion in itself. A religion is not necessarily something that has a connotation to Christianity. A religion is whatever a body of mass or group of people believe is something is there. It has a slight supernatural aspect to it, and therefore that is venerated as a religion in itself. That does not mean that I am dismissing any particular presence of any higher spirit form that has your best interests at heart. Okay, there's a difference. What I am simply explaining to you in as basic as I can in terms of this particular subject is that it is not that simple, number one, and that materialism runs along with capitalism, and capitalism is then, as I've said in the previous video on the Ouroboros, tied into a belief system of controlling time through monetary as well as occult science as such. Okay, so what is spirituality? Spirituality is the awareness of who we are as masculine and feminine principal beings within our physiological mind, body, soul, and spirit. Masculine principle and feminine principle is not related to the physical uh, uh, denomination or classification of the actual species in itself. Masculine and feminine principles are related to what is within, and it is metaphorical in discussion as well as metaphysical. So keep this in mind at all times, that all the discussions that we have on this channel is particularly related to a metaphysical frequency as such. So the path, what is the spirit, what is spirit's mission, spirit in singular form, what is spirit's mission? The simple version of spirit's mission is to go into this reality, to gather information, learn from it by experiencing it, thinking on it, changing how one's reaction is towards it, and then to return back one day with this particular information or mission that was either successful according to the person that did it or unsuccessful. It is a personal perception of whether you feel that your life on this earth, on this reality, was a success or not. Based on what you've learned in terms of your experiences, that is based on your internal lesson, whether you feel it was worth it or not. What is soul? Soul is the wanderer of the worlds. In other words, the anima mundi or anima mundus, which is masculine or feminine, depending on what way. As far as I'm aware, the soul is feminine, but according to the Latin, they describe the anima mundi or the soul wanderer as either it has masculine or feminine principles. Now, I'm assuming that that has a lot to do with regards to what role the spirit allows the soul to have in this reality. In terms of the actual deeper awareness on how to explain it again, I will bring up the subject on the Uber driver and the person that is going and the passenger. You have the car, the vehicle, which is the vessel, the physical vessel, the matter, and you have the driver, which is the soul or the anima mundi, and you have the GPS system, which is the mind, and also the ego, and you have the spirit, which is the passenger that climbs in the back and operates the entire mission from that perspective. You cannot let the Uber driver drive you around if you don't tell them where you want them to go. You cannot function in this world with only the Uber driver exploring and experiencing everything. That means you are essentially not intact as such. So I'm leaving this with you to consider in your thoughts, that is what we're looking at. I'm going to discuss with you what the spirit is in itself. But I can only discuss what it is if I give you the other aspects that are related to it, that ties in with it, and then you'll be able to understand the deeper meaning of it. What is the higher self? The higher self is related to the thoughts of the spirit in what you hear and what you think. In other words, the higher self is when the spirit says to the driver, "Driver, take me to the beach, this address." And there is an exchange. And the driver says, "Okay, let's do this." Soul, we're going to come to earth. We're going to come into the earth and we're going to be born into a family that is going to be extremely aggressive and cruel. Okay, what am I going to have to do to be able to go through this? So Spirit says, the passenger says, Soul, you're a part of me, and inherently, you're a kind being. You love and you care for all things beautiful and natural around you. Your biggest lesson is to learn that even if you're going into the worst kind of conditioned state of your physiological existence, that you will suffer, but you will understand that whenever you go through these suffering things, that this is your mission, your lesson, to be able to sustain through it. If you fail this lesson, you will have failed only yourself. And then you can come back again to repeat the same lesson, reincarnation. So soul accepts the mission. There is the exchange in thought. And soul takes part in the family of an extremely abusive family. Goes through hell, literally. But remembers at certain points in time through dreams and visions and people speaking to him, her, it. You know you're here for something bigger. I know I'm here for something bigger. I know that I'm supposed to learn something from this, but I don't know what it is. So I will try everything. Come have some drugs and alcohol, whatever. Soul gets lost, loses itself, loses perspective. The car stands still. The Uber driver is outside of the car. Has no clue what. Well, the spirit is still inside the car. So these are all the scenarios that we can think up, that we can share and explain in the way that we have been going through in this world. Now, what is death? Death is a transition, a physical ending of the vehicle's role in this reality. It is supposed to happen because it is inherent to this earth, to this reality. This reality has certain keys put in place. Nothing, not one thing that is material is eternal. It has no infinite existence because this reality is built on a constant change, a constant evaluation between polarities. In other words, it is always going to be moving. If I say something to you that is perfect, within a second it will become imperfect and you will move to seek the next perfect thing. What I'm trying to explain to you is this reality is not infinite. The only thing that is infinite is that it is in constant flux or in constant change. Therefore, all things and all people that say predictions, talk about predictions, they are smoking their socks. Predictions do not exist either. How is it possible for a psychic to be able to pinpoint a particular time, date, and event to take place in a specific way? The only way to do that is when the psychic allows their soul and spirit to correlate with the highest potential experience of that event in that particular moment of time. And only with practice does one be able to do that. The actual process of death, of the release of the soul from the actual vessel, the physical, the car, When the soul extracts its own existence within this reality, in other words, when the Uber driver climbs out of the car, it happens by choice, whether it was untimely or not. If the soul does not leave the physical body, the soul can then reactivate the life path. If that's not possible and the vessel is not in a good state, say the car crashed, it is not possible for the driver to put the car back to drive the car. The soul has to step out of the car. And realistically speaking, the realm of the soul, of the soul experience, is within, around us. As I've said, if I breathe out this air that I've just breathed out, this is how close it is. This is how strongly it is related to us. If you want to speak to those who have passed on, they are called people who have passed on, not ghosts. It is a derogatory way of referring to soul, people who have passed on. It is like I'm calling you something else when you were originally called John or Peter or Susan. You are a spirit, you are in your spirited form. The soul will eventually return back to its spirit. It is its original higher spirited form. And then when there is time in relation to some immediate communication that has to take place from the physical reality to the unphysical, non-physical reality, then spirit will choose to speak to you. It is a choice. Still. In cases such as, for example, possession, demons, because I can see there's a lot of that stories going around as well. Demonology in itself is not as it is portrayed through the mainstream movies and media. An actual spirit, depending on how their personality was in the physical reality, will stay the same. If your grandfather was a gentleman, he will be a gentleman after he's passed on. If he behaves like a pig, then that is not your grandfather. Okay. If there is something else that bothers you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, for example, you feel someone's watching you while you're in the bath, then you have to make sure that when you went to go and have your bath, that you have cleared up all your thoughts on feeling like someone's watching me. Fear, fear, fear. You have to get rid of that fear. You have to change it. Very rarely is it possible for any spirit to enter a domain, a physical domain, an inner domain, the inner sanctum. This is called your inner sanctum. Very rarely is it possible for any of these things to come into this domain and in this domain, unless I have allowed it in one way or another by some agreement. And very often there are a lot of people who are in conflict with this particular information that I'm discussing when I say that the best way to show you an example of an archon is by explaining to you that it is within your inner domain, because that is where the best havoc can take place. And so you must understand that at any given point, if you have watched a horror movie 5 months ago and something in it just stuck with you, it's going to bother you. It doesn't matter what it is. People, when you speak to people, can often also create some sort of agreement with you, whether you are subjected to it or whether you perhaps felt triggered or hypnotized by it for that moment in time, or that spirit to then enter or bridge into your consciousness. But at any given point in time, any spirit that speaks to one comes from where it was in its location to speaking within here, in the inner domain. If I don't want devils and monsters and demons to come into my inner domain, I must make sure that my inner domain is clear. I must make sure that what I'm thinking is clear and is clean, hygienic, disciplined. And the very same principle, an example, if I watch mainstream media, I am very often triggered by what they are portraying for me to believe in, to be hypnotized in, so that they can use their magicians to send out things that they've conjured from all over the place to bombard people. So the actual story with regards to possession is quite a different side, as you've noticed. And I can speak from experience because I have been in a position where I have had to help someone who claimed that they were possessed, when in actuality it was a fractured mind because of some trauma that happened a long time ago. Okay. So the exorcism of Emily Rose is very bollocks, okay? And I'm going to point it out to you again. It is not true. Do not allow that to control your thoughts. I'm giving all these subjects, I'm bringing all this information in and explaining every single part of it as such. On the in-between life, which is the life that we are existing in right now, every moment is a complete still moment in itself. In the material reality, it is interpreted as a frequency of light. One part of light frequency can be interpreted in its descending and expression. When a thought descends, it is referenced to the fall of that thought. It is metaphorical and metaphysically a representation of, as I've said to you before, Lucifer is a frequency of light that is rebellious. And it is sometimes important that we have to have a rebellious thought inside of us to not accept failure. And so once that thought comes from my mind and I then act on that thought, then I then become the fallen. But that is a reference, a metaphorical representation. When a thought falls, it means it does not, it descends into my mind and into my body for me to act on it. That is all that is. Therefore, I'm trying to tell you that there is no such thing as a fallen angel. Unless you want to consider the entire human planet that becomes rebellious, it's one place or another, acting out these thoughts that have been descended. And therefore, then I would rather say descended thoughts is more what we're looking at as such. The natural world that we exist in has many systems connected to it. These systems are man-made. And we're talking about the materialistic side, remember? And what is man-made is made to be interpreted for its merit and not for its potential to become worshipped as. In other words, idols. There is only one omnipresent spirit. Excuse me. It has many faces. It has many expressions. It has exactly only three expressions. It has exactly only three faces, and it operates in that frequency. When a man listens to outside of themselves information that comes from someone who is not aware or who is dismissive of this particular information, then I would like to give you a heads up on that, so that you are aware that what you could be listening to could be not supporting your spirit. One great spirit exists in this reality as well as outside of this reality. The earth, with the sun and the moon, and all the other heavenly bodies are inside of this nucleus, like an egg. And then you have the egg the right side up, which means the smaller part at the top and not at the bottom, as so often being inverted. Once the smaller part of the egg is at the top, which means the pointy bit, that means that that is all there is. The Great Spirit is experiencing all of that in its entirety, including through the people. If a human lives without the awareness of its own spirit as the element that governs life. In other words, if you change the way you think by knowing that you don't think with the constant seeking of what is ahead for you, but if you're thinking with the awareness of a passenger in the Uber driver car, that's objectivity, then you are going to be most likely become aware of a lot of things that you will see around you that you don't always have to take part in. But if you want to believe that there is only one part and the Uber driver runs the shots, then you have a problem. And then that means you have perhaps allowed yourself to live with the expectations of a constant materialistic support. That means that you have perhaps decided, and this is general, this is not at anyone, this is an example of how things like this work. When I'm speaking about this, I'm not speaking about you if you do not understand, but you are working to try and understand this concept. It is not an easy concept to grasp. It takes a long time to figure it out, to really become aware of it. Okay, so that aside, I'm speaking about those who are aware of the spirit and who are deliberately choosing not to allow themselves to be connected to that awareness, that they are deliberately allowing only their soul to control their life. In other words, letting the Uber driver run the shots. Okay. That's a problem. And that is what's been going on this planet currently as we speak. Is it a choice? Yes, it is a choice. Why do some people do that? Some people do that because it's too much hard work to really go within and to understand that they have to forfeit the actual worshipping of this reality. They have to stop worshipping it because they'll realize within themselves that if they stop worshipping the reality, they'll see, oh shit, it's just constantly moving. It's like I can't have my house stand on solid ground. It's always going to move. The sand is always going to move around. I think that's that story where they said the one guy built his house. I think the three little piggies. One built it with straw, one built it on sand, and the other one, or built it with sand, the other one built it with rock. That's the beliefs. Those are belief systems. So it just happens so that we can explain then that there are three main perpetrators that are pushing for this agenda for the Uber driver to totally take over and 10 to 1 modify the car so it becomes a supercar or through transhumanism, okay, through ritual, keep polishing the car, keep getting the upgrades on the car. I think you're following where I'm going with this. There are three elements that are exactly going in opposite direction to what we are going into. And they are the ones that are, as we speak, running the show in the materialistic philosophy of this reality. They want the physical reality to become a permanent fixture. They want it to become permanent. So they are going very, very hard at trying to alter the astrophysiological elements such as temperature, weather, the sky phenomena, wind, sun, moon, you name it, stars. And they're trying to make these things so that it becomes another reality, so that it becomes something that holds the current planet in its physical form. So they do not want this reality to become what it originally was meant to be, a book with lessons for the soul and the spirit to explore and to learn from and to return back. It's like I'm telling you, actually, really, if you want to have a freaking amazing life, then make sure that you pray that the stuff that you watch on TV becomes a reality. And then you're going to have your Beverly Hills 90210 fixture of your life. There are the solar cult believers. They are Masonic, but patriarchal, sun-worshipping, monotheistic. Monotheistic means to worship one God. Then you have the lunar cult believers, feminine. That means they are working with a bit of pagan magic in the night, worshipping the moon, using the feminine psyche, the soul, to weave their magic spells. Whereas the other one is totally physical and worships the physical form of the world. The mason builders, building the brick by brick by brick. Who else other than, remember the story about the three piggies? Okay. And then you have the other bunch. You won't notice them initially at first, but you will start seeing them creeping through. Slowly they come into this whole thing. Initially, we spoke about the battle between fire and ice. Was also mentioned by Lavette, who is also on YouTube for those who are interested. I reference the people that I reference work from. I luckily don't have a problem with sharing that information. And so this third form, this third element, or this third thing, I would call them the Harry Potter Club or the magicians. They're the ones that have been working very diligently hard Initially, I think that they are the children of the boomers, of the baby boomers. And I also feel that they are now becoming more adult. They are not just only millennials. I'm not referring to the millennials as such. That is also another label that should just not be there. Because every time there's a label, it characterizes that person's soul. It fixes that person's soul in that particular belief, whether they are or they're not. So I'd say that these magicians are very spoilt. Yes, they are, because the older folks have worked super hard to lay the path quite clearly from the past. And all they literally do is fix on them. Their agenda is to turn those two old dogs against each other so that they can walk away with the entire thing. They introduce infidelity. They introduce misogyny. They introduce schizophrenic culture. They introduce conscious, destructive, psychopathic tendencies. And they introduce the control over the spirit and the soul, the mind and body through hypnotic, occult, cult control through magic. One of this magic I have mentioned about this magic. It is the same magic that the Nazis believed that they could have over the control over the spirit of a country by accessing that country's sacred site. Now I'm going to explain to you something else. This is why we are adamantly having to go within ourselves, even though we're hearing so-and-so president talking about so many hundredth of umpteenth lockdown, and this and so many hundred and umpteenth person has died of this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and just this clutter, this utter clutter of shit that's just spewing all over the place. And it's constantly over and over and over loading and loading and loading up. And it's creating within your thoughts this confusion so that you literally don't know where to switch off. You don't know how to switch off. So here's a tip. It sounds funny, but it actually works. I have earplugs. They're wax earplugs. I plug them into my ears so I can literally not hear anything. I sensory deprive myself for about a minute or two so that I am able to feel my own inner calmness. And then I do that. And it actually works. It's wonderful, because if I close my eyes, I then am enabling myself to take control over all of myself. Just by breathing. Try the earplugs. I know this was random that I threw this in here, but this is something that I thought I should share with you. So now I'm going to explain to you what is evil. Now that we know that, wrapping it up, or in a nutshell, that the spirit is essentially the passenger, that is your higher self. That higher self is an embodiment or fractal of a greater spirit at any given point in time of existence, at however many lifetimes. That higher spirit, that great spirit, is always going to be there and is operating all the time. Now I'm going to explain to you what is evil. Evil, simplified, I could say, and this is very direct, I suppose, those who are wanting to worship the earth for what it can do for them in terms of ego, worshipping the earth so that it becomes something that is at the cost of others, wanting to commit actual ritual sacrifice at the cost of others for personal worshipping, of venerating the earth, who want to live forever. All right, those ones. That is an Orion belief system. But recently I've been shown that not all Orions have been malevolent, so I'm the first to admit that. Evil is a deliberate contradiction and abortion, metaphorically, of the natural state of the spirit. In other words, the Uber driver chucks a spirit out of the car. There. That is an absolute shearing off or breaking off of the awareness of spirit. Remember, I said to start off, when I started off by saying spirit is, great spirit exists and is constantly moving between the high and the low. It is constantly changing. It is like the sea that moves out and comes back in. It is constantly evolving. It is moving. Okay, it's like in a living, organic, breathing. You can't stop breathing in the middle of your breath and stay motionless. That's what they want, though. If you do that, you actually tell your spirit to get out. You go and commit a crime. You go and commit an abusive ritual where you actually kill that baby or that animal, or whatever the case it is, countries of people, and then at the cost of them, you have then decided to do something that is so inverted to your higher understanding, because that is what you want. So it is like saying, I'm going to kill God. That's an example. The word God is a man-made element anyway. I'm going to kill God inside of me. I know God loves me, but I'm going to kill God in that animal. Because then if I can kill God in that animal, it means then I will stop feeling that I am part of God, because I really don't want to be with God. I want to be here. That is what evil is. Okay. That is abortion of the spirit. I'm calling it that. There are so many rituals that have been put down and notated in so many books and historical novels where it is described in detail how it is done. Something that is quite disturbing, I think, comes from a few people such as Aleister Crowley, where he initially created such a lot of extra information to create chaos, and then on top of that, his other things in between that he wanted to drive for. I mean, he was really jealous of JPL, the rocket guy. So much so that he actually wanted him to be part of his little occult stories, his rituals. Meanwhile, Crowley was working for MI5, MI6 as an agent to create mystical bullshit. Literally, there is an agency that was created to create mystical bullshit. For a fact. He wanted to baffle that guy so that he could take control of his life because he was jealous. Which is a ritual which is very relevant to what's happening now. Why do they do this? I don't know. I wish I could tell you straightforward I knew. Unless I can say this, perhaps it's because they're greedy to live forever. They're lazy and they don't want to work on themselves internally, so they would rather just do it outside of themselves. It's easier just to have banks and banks and banks of money rather than to do some inner spiritual work. They're shit scared anyway of us. We've had some psychic attacks over the last few weeks where they were literally actually trying to push energy at us to derail us from our energy work that we were doing. A few of us came together to clear the sacred sites on the planet, on the physical planet. And after that, they didn't like that. So I've just voiced it out very loudly so that those who are seeing this will know that we are aware of them, just as they think they are aware of us. They are narcissists, they are psychopathic, and they want to derail you as much as they can by trying to give you as much information that could change your inner awareness of who you are. But if you can remember the story about the Uber driver and the passenger, that you're all of that, including the ego, which is meant to be there as a counter or barometer of the mind. It is also there to assist you in physically surviving. So that is important. What is the world's role in the human existence? The world, as we're existing in, its role for us is to be there as a book for us to look into, to experience, and to learn from, as I've given you that example, that analogy. And so I'm leaving this information with you. It was long, and I didn't bring all of the information in as I wanted to, but I spoke as I felt I was driven to speak about the parts that I could. For more detailed in the information itself, please feel free to read all of that information on my website at www.the-promethean.com. And please feel free to comment and subscribe there, here, wherever you want. And thank you for letting me speak, since we all speak and we are all part of Great Spirit. The information that comes through here is made for us to understand who we are, and however many we are in understanding and awareness of our spirited existence as Great Spirit, as part of Great Spirit. In other words, Great Spirit individually aware of our original inner organic blueprint means we are able to understand and see everything for what it is in this reality. Be mindful that you always take note of what you are listening to and what you are looking at the time of the day. If it's late at night, then chances are you could be dreaming about it. So start using some discipline in that way as well. But I'm going to leave this with you. Thoughts are welcome to share. And thank you so much. And look after yourself. Much love. Bye.